In 1971, a devout father killed his entire family in cold blood, then disappeared without a trace. He left behind a mansion full of bodies, a letter to God, and no photos of himself. For 18 years, he lived under a new name, undetected until one TV show exposed the truth. This is the haunting story of John List, the man who murdered to save souls and vanished into the crowd.
John List looked like every other suburban father conservative, quiet and devout. He lived in a grand Victorian mansion in Westfield, New Jersey, with his wife, mother, and 3 children. They were church-going Lutherans, respectable, private. Nothing about them seemed off. But behind the pristine walls of Breeze Knoll, darkness was brewing. Helen List, his wife, was battling alcoholism and mental illness. Their marriage was disintegrating. Their daughter Patricia wanted to be an actress. That troubled John deeply. He was a strict man. He believed ambition outside family and church was sinful. Their financial situation was deteriorating fast. John had lost his job. Ashamed, he pretended to go to work each day, sitting at the train station reading newspapers. He was borrowing from his mother's account just to keep up appearances. His pride would not allow him to accept welfare. To him, that was moral failure. His children were teenagers now. He feared they were drifting from faith. He convinced himself the world was corrupt, and that death might be a form of salvation. So he started planning. Not out of rage, but out of cold, delusional righteousness. He cut himself out of every family photo, so police couldn't use them to find him. He wrote a confession to his pastor comb, detailed, almost polite. He stopped the milk delivery, the mail. He wrote letters to the school, then he waited. And when the moment came, he did what no father ever should. He killed his family, one by one, in the name of God and protection. Then he locked the door behind him, disappeared, and left a trail of silence for 18 years. Helen List was the first to die. John shot her in the kitchen right after breakfast. Then he climbed the stairs and killed his 84-year-old mother in her upstairs apartment. He waited for the children to return from school, one at a time. Patricia walked in. She was shot immediately. Then Frederick, then John Jr. John Jr. didn't go quietly. He fought. He was shot multiple times. List laid their bodies on sleeping bags in the ballroom, next to a stained glass skylight. He wrote letters, dozens, one to the pastor, one to the school, one to his boss who didn't exist. He turned on the house intercom and piped in organ music from a Christian radio station. Then he vanished, gone like vapor. Just another man in a gray suit. Weeks passed. Neighbors noticed the lights were on. The windows steamed with condensation. No one had seen the Lists in a while. The mail was stacking up. Police finally entered the home. The stench hit first, then the silence. And then they saw the sleeping bags lined up like a funeral no one attended. 5 dead. No killer, no clues, no photographs of the man they were hunting. The mansion sat empty for months before being burned down by arson. Breeze Knoll was no more, but the story stayed in the air, in the news, in the nightmares of Westfield. America wondered, how could a father erase his family, then blend into society like smoke? No one would know the answer. Not for almost 2 decades. John List became Bob Clark. He moved to Colorado and got an accounting job. He remarried, went to church, played shuffleboard. No one suspected a thing. He was polite, punctual, devout, just like before. Except this time, he didn't have a family to control. He lived under the radar, telling people his first wife had died of cancer. He blended in so well. Even his new wife didn't know his past. For 18 years, the FBI had nothing. No fingerprints, no leads, no photo to show the public. Then came America's Most Wanted, a show designed to catch fugitives with the help of viewers. They hired forensic artist Frank Bender to sculpt what John List might look like now. He used clay, psychology, imagination, and he got it frighteningly right. The bust aired in May 1989. Millions watched, including a neighbor of Bob Clark in Virginia. The neighbor called the tip line. "I think your guy is living next door." FBI agents swarmed his home. They knocked. He answered, calm as ever. He denied it at first, but his fingerprints told the truth that it was him. John Emil List, the man who murdered 5 and prayed over their bodies. He was arrested and brought back to New Jersey. The trial would soon begin, and the quiet accountant from Denver would finally face the ghosts he tried to bury. John List's trial began in 1990. He was now 64 years old. His defense claimed he suffered from PTSD and extreme religious delusion, but the evidence was overwhelming. The letter to his pastor was read aloud. Jurors listened in stunned silence as he justified the murders to save their souls. The courtroom was filled with gasps, tears, and disbelief. List showed little emotion. He still believed he had done the right thing. It took the jury 9 hours to find him guilty of 5 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. No possibility of parole. He died in prison in 2008. No visitors, no funeral, no remorse. But his story lived on, an icon of hidden horror behind suburban walls. The Westfield house was rebuilt, but many say it remains haunted by what happened there. To this day, his name is synonymous with cold-blooded betrayal and religious fanaticism. John List wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was a monster in plain sight, a man who calculated salvation through blood, and nearly got away with it. His case inspired books, documentaries, and endless questions. How many people live among us with secrets that dark? How many families are hiding in plain sight, behind curtains and silence? John List showed the world that evil wears a tie, carries a briefcase, sits in a pew. He killed his family to save them. But no God ever asked for that.
welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going into a really disturbing story, the case of John List.
Yeah, it's quite something. An accountant seemed perfectly normal back in 1971.
Until he murdered his entire family, his wife, his mother, his 3 kids, and then just disappeared.
We're almost 2 decades. It's pretty chilling.
So for this deep dive, we're using the John List Wikipedia page as our main source. It gives a pretty solid factual overview, his background, the crimes, the escape.
Right, up through his capture, the trial, and sort of the legacy of the case.
Exactly. And our mission here, for you listening, is to really understand the key parts of this awful case. What could possibly make someone like List do this? According to the source, anyway.
And how on earth did he stay hidden for so long? There are some, well, frankly, bizarre details that make this case stick in your mind.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. John Emil List, born in Bay City, Michigan, 1925.
Only child. His parents were devout Lutherans, German-American.
And that religious side seems really important. He was devout too, like his father, even taught Sunday school.
Yeah, that seems like a core part of his identity early on, very traditional upbringing.
Then high school, graduated 43, enlisted in the Army, World War II, served as a lab tech.
His father died while he was serving in 44. He was discharged in 46.
After the war, he went to college, University of Michigan, got degrees in business and accounting.
And he was commissioned as a lieutenant through ROTC there. So you see this mix already. Strong faith, military background, and finance.
Then he gets recalled for the Korean War in 1950.
And that's when he meets Helen Morris Taylor. She was a widow. Her first husband died in Korea. She had a daughter, Brenda.
And yeah, married pretty quickly, 1951. Moved out to Northern California.
And because of his accounting skills, the Army reassigned him to the finance corps. Makes sense.
After that second tour, he goes into civilian accounting. Detroit, then Kalamazoo.
Right. Kalamazoo is where their 3 children were born, Patricia, Frederick, and John Frederick.
And he was doing well professionally, seems like. Rose to general supervisor by 1959.
Yeah, but then there's this underlying issue with his wife, Helen. The source mentions increasing instability.
Tied to undisclosed syphilis from her first marriage.
Exactly. That's what the source states. Apparently, it wasn't discussed openly, but it was affecting her health significantly.
Around then, his stepdaughter Brenda marries and leaves home.
And the family moves again, this time to Rochester, New York in 1960. He got a job with Xerox.
Climbed the ladder there too, eventually became director of accounting services. So outwardly, success.
Right, successful career path, but these significant personal issues simmering beneath the surface.
Then 1965, another big move. New Jersey.
Took a job as VP and controller at a bank in Jersey City.
And this is when they buy the big house, Breeze Knoll, 19 rooms, Victorian mansion in Westfield.
Quite the place. He moved his wife, their 3 kids, and his mother, Alma, all in there.
Looks like the absolute picture of the American dream, doesn't it?
Right.
Big house, good job.
On the surface, yes. But just 6 years later, that grand house becomes, well, infamous.
November 9th, 1971, the day it all happened.
Yeah, the Wikipedia page details are just brutal. While the kids were at school, he shot Helen, his wife, 47, back of the head, used a 9mm Steyr handgun.
And his own father's .22 caliber revolver, too, apparently.
Right. Then his mother, Alma, who was 84, shot above the left eye.
Then the children came home from school. Patricia, 16, and Frederick, 13.
Both shot in the back of the head, just like their mother.
And finally, the older son, John Frederick, 15. He came home from a soccer game.
His death was different, shot repeatedly. The source says it indicated signs of self-defense. He must have fought back.
It's just horrific to even picture the sequence of it all.
And what he did next. He placed Helen and the children's bodies in sleeping bags. In the ballroom.
The ballroom. In this huge mansion.
Yeah. And his mother's body. He put her in the attic.
And then he wrote a letter, 5 pages, to his pastor.
Essentially a confession. He talked about money problems, being laid off.
But also this really warped religious justification, believing his family was straying from their faith.
Exactly. He wrote that he killed them to save their souls, so they could all get to heaven. He hoped to join them there. It's deeply disturbing logic.
The premeditation is chilling. He cleaned the crime scenes.
And get this, he cut his own picture out of all the family photos, like trying to erase himself before he even left.
Wow. He also tuned the radio to a religious station and then just walked out.
It wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, coldly calculated.
And then nobody found them for almost a month. December 7th.
It's incredible, isn't it? Part of that was the family being somewhat reclusive, apparently.
But he actively covered it up, sent notes to the kids' schools, their jobs.
Saying they were visiting an ailing grandmother in North Carolina, which wasn't even true. Helen's mother was ill, but she'd canceled a visit to them.
He stopped the mail, the milk deliveries, the newspapers, all of it.
Creating this illusion that they were just away, buying himself crucial time.
It shows such a disconnect, the respectable facade versus this monster.
It was the neighbors who finally tipped off the police. They noticed all the lights were always on, but no one was around. Then bulbs started burning out one by one.
That's what led the police to check. They found unlocked window in the basement.
And suddenly this quiet town, Westfield, is all over the national news. Massive manhunt starts.
But they hit a wall pretty fast. Remember, he destroyed all the good photos of himself.
Right. Big problem for investigators back then. They found the family car at JFK Airport.
Which makes you think he flew somewhere.
You'd think so, but there was no proof he actually got on a plane. Another dead end. Just vanished.
And then the house, Breeze Knoll. It burns down the next summer, August 72.
Arson. Never solved. Just adds another layer of weirdness to the whole thing.
There was some rumor about a valuable Tiffany skylight being destroyed in the fire, too.
Yeah, supposedly worth a lot of money. Gone. Like the house itself was another casualty.
So he didn't fly. The source says he took a train. First Michigan, then Colorado.
Settled in Denver, early 1972. And starts a whole new life.
As Robert Peter Clark. Bob Clark. An identity he apparently lifted from a college classmate he didn't even know well.
It's quite stunning, his ability to just become someone else.
Right.
And keep it up for so long.
He got work as an accountant again. Use his actual skills.
Joined a Lutheran church, there's that religious element again. Ran a carpool. Seemed totally normal.
He even got married again. To Dolores Miller in 1985.
Unbelievable. And then in 88, they moved to Midlothian, Virginia. Still Bob Clark, still an accountant.
Living this completely ordinary life, built on this horrific secret. How do you even do that?
It's hard to comprehend the compartmentalization required.
You know, for a little while, they even thought he might be D.B. Cooper, the hijacker.
Oh, yeah, I read that. The timing, vague description. But the FBI ruled him out pretty quickly.
Shows how much of a blank slate he become.
Yeah.
But television, that's what finally caught up with him.
America's Most Wanted, May 1989. That episode was the key.
They featured the case, and they had that forensic bust, the age-progressed sculpture.
Made by Frank Bender. And it was incredibly accurate, apparently. Showed what List would likely look like after all those years.
It's amazing, isn't it? Forensic science plus mass media.
That combination cracked it. A former neighbor in Denver saw the show, recognized Bob Clark.
Called it in, and within 2 weeks,
They arrested him. In Richmond, Virginia, June 1st, 1989, nearly 18 years later.
even then, he stuck to the Bob Clark story for months.
Until February 1990, they had irrefutable proof fingerprints matched the military records, evidence from the crime scene. He finally confessed his real identity.
The trial must have been intense. What came out then?
Well, List testified about his side of things, the financial pressure, losing his job, the shame.
He didn't want the humiliation of his family knowing or going on welfare.
Exactly. And he brought up Helen's issues again, the alcoholism, the syphilis he claimed she hid.
He even claimed she'd faked a pregnancy to get him to bury her, and insisted they marry in Maryland to avoid a syphilis test.
That's what he testified, yeah. He painted a picture of her health declining, her becoming paranoid, withdrawn, even humiliating him in public.
How much of that is true versus him trying to justify the unjustifiable, you wonder?
Always a question. The court psychiatrist diagnosed him with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, OCPD.
And suggested he saw only two ways out.
Yeah. Welfare, which his pride and his father's teachings made unacceptable, or killing everyone to save their souls. A terrifyingly warped perspective.
It shows that dangerous mix of his rigid personality, the perceived failures, and that extreme religious interpretation.
Absolutely. He seemed unable to cope, and his distorted beliefs led him to see murder as a righteous act in some twisted way.
He was convicted, of course, April 1990. 5 counts of first-degree murder.
Got 5 consecutive life sentences, maximum possible penalty in New Jersey at the time.
He appealed later, right, claiming PTSD from his military service. And that the letter shouldn't have been used.
Yeah, but those appeals were rejected.
Did he ever show real remorse?
Sources say he expressed some remorse later, but he sort of maintained he wasn't fully responsible because of his mental state back in '71.
John List died in prison. March 21st, 2008. Pneumonia complications. He was 82.
The boogeyman of Westfield, as the Star Ledger called him. That name really stuck.
And the case itself certainly stuck in the public consciousness.
Oh, definitely. Documentaries, forensic files, Law and Order use elements, American Justice.
Films, too, like The Stepfather. And that Judgment Day TV movie even influenced The Usual Suspects, apparently, and the Netflix show The Watcher.
Right, and that age-progressed bust, the one from America's Most Wanted, it's actually in a crime museum now, a symbol of how he was caught.
So summing it all up, you had this guy, looks totally normal on the outside, accountant, family man.
Who meticulously plans and carries out the slaughter of his entire family, wife, mother, 3 kids.
Then disappears, builds a whole new life under a fake name for nearly 2 decades. Just astonishing.
Until that combination of forensic art and television finally brought his hidden life crashing down.
The question that lingers, I think, is just why? What pushes someone to that absolute extreme?
And how does a person maintain that kind of deception for so long, living a lie every single day?
It really makes you think about, the hidden pressures people might be under, the weight of failure, real or perceived.
The complexities inside someone who seems ordinary. What does this case tell you about that hidden darkness?
And are there other cases like this? People who just vanish, assume new identities? What questions do those raise for you? Something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.